Venezuela unveiled its new national map in December, adding an area the size of Florida to its territory. But this land, called the Essequibo, belongs to Guyana, a country rich in gold and diamonds. It is now one of the world's fastest growing crude oil producers. For more than a century, Venezuela has laid claim to the territory.
Annexing Essequibo is practically wiping Guyana off of the map.
I'm here in Caracas trying to understand more about President Maduro's plans to take over this land and what it means in this region as these two oil-rich countries clash. The dispute for the Essequibo dates back to the 19th century when Great Britain acquired Guyana and expanded its territory to the west. But Venezuela protested, saying the Essequibo was part of its territory under Spanish rule. Tensions between the two countries intensified in 1966 when Guyana gained independence from Britain. Guyana has since sought a resolution through the International Court of Justice, but Venezuela rejects the procedure. The Essequibo makes up 2/3 of Guyana and is mostly covered in rainforest. The territory has large reserves of gold and diamonds.
The Essequibo region contribute to the country's economic wealth. Our forest is an important resource. We have large deposits of gold reserves.
But a turning point came in 2015 when oil was found off the Essequibo coast. Since then, a consortium led by the US oil giant ExxonMobil said it has discovered up to 11 billion barrels of oil and natural gas resources. Oil executives say that this was the largest discovery of the decade. It could give the country the highest oil output per capita in the world, ahead of oil-rich Kuwait and Saudi Arabia.
Guyana, it's interesting because it's a new producer. It's a country where until 2015, no one knew that there was oil, and it has started to produce, and it's a not OPEC member, which is very important. And it includes its possibility to already deliver oil to the market in a market that is restricted because of all the sanctions that exist to Russia.
Because of its newfound oil revenues, Guyana had the highest real GDP growth in the world in 2022, 62.3%. And the International Monetary Fund predicts its GDP will keep growing. Guyana went from one of South America's poorest countries to having one of the world's fastest growing economies.
We're poised to earn on average about $5 to $6 billion per annum by 2035.
But Venezuela's president Nicolas Maduro says the oil reserves in the Essequibo belong to his country. While Guyana reaps from the oil windfall, Venezuela's economy has contracted 80% since Maduro came to office in 2013. Nearly 8 million Venezuelans have fled in the past decade. Hundreds of thousands of them wound up in the US. In order to oust Maduro, the US imposed sanctions on the Venezuelan oil industry in 2019. The Biden administration agreed to temporarily lift some economic sanctions on Venezuela in October in exchange for democratic reforms, which include allowing opposition candidates to run in this year's presidential election. US officials said that allowing more oil and gas money to flow in could help stabilize Venezuela and ease the large flow of migrants. But when it comes to the Essequibo dispute, Washington is not on Venezuela's side. The State Department said it supports Guyana, which has held meetings with officials from the US Defense Department to increase cooperation. In December, Venezuela's government said more than 10 million voters approved annexing Essequibo in a referendum. But election experts have cast doubts on the veracity of the results, especially in a country where the government has been accused of widespread electoral fraud in past elections.
El único vencedor es el pueblo de Venezuela, es la dignidad de Venezuela, es la soberanía de Venezuela. Y los únicos perdedores son el gobierno de Guyana, la ExxonMobil, el imperio norteamericano.
After the referendum, Maduro ordered the country's state-owned companies to explore and exploit the oil, gas, and mines in the Essequibo, and told foreign companies that they have 3 months to abandon their operations in the region.
Guyana views this as an imminent threat to its territorial integrity and will intensify precautionary measures.
As tensions started to rise, the UK sent a warship to support Guyana, and Maduro responded with air and naval exercises near the border. Experts said the referendum was largely a wag-the-dog moment for Maduro, as he tries to rally nationalist support ahead of the presidential election later this year.
It's a typical strategy of a dictator, autocrat, of finding a problem to distract people from their reality, which is a completely devastated economic situation and a horrible humanitarian situation.
The leaders of Guyana and Venezuela have met to discuss the annexation and agreed to avoid conflict. But Guyana refused Maduro's plans to settle the dispute through bilateral negotiations, asking the UN to intervene and lay Venezuela's claims to rest. But experts say the case is likely to drag on for years.